do a quick little introduction. So, can you give a little bit of a background on who Herman Kaur is?
Yeah, Harman Kaur is a writer, she's a mother, and she's the author of two poetry collections. The first one, Folkari, which I actually do have with me just to kind of show. So there's Folkari, and Folkari was self-published in 2018, and then I took a little bit of a break, and Call Me Home just released in 2025 of February. Other than writing, you could say I'm a public speaker. I do lots of speaking events related to poetry, related to Sikh activism, and most importantly, I'm a mother. And so I have a 1-year-old son, and I'm also the mother of a 2-year-old French bulldog named Laddu.
Oh, that is so cute, Laddu. Aw. Well, I want to start where Herman's story started. Where did this idea of becoming a writer, or how did you nurture this as childhood? So, walk me through your childhood as a Sikh writer and going through that.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the word nurture, and I think that's actually the key point here is it was nurtured into me. My father has holds a master's of English from Punjab, and he was actually a teacher and a lecturer there before immigrating to Canada. And it was kind of this, not even sadness, but just this like my father wasn't able to pursue his career in Canada because the issues that immigrants deal with, and there's issues of money for upgrading education, and money is what you don't have at that point. So my father put aside that dream, put aside that career, and he started driving a truck like most Punjabi dads do. And so I guess when he saw, I was a bookworm as a kid. Like I was those kids that your mom finds you reading under the drawer, like your gumball at night. And so he really saw that I loved to read. And we have this kind of stereotype in our community that you either have to be a lawyer, engineer, doctor, and that's it. And that's what Punjabi parents expect of us. But I was lucky that when I told my parents that I wanted to pursue English in undergrad, my dad was over the moon and he was elated. And so, one, I guess to answer your question, number one would be it was nurtured into me. My parents really, really supported my dream. And second, I mentioned I was a bookworm and I read like every single day. And I guess at a certain point, as you're growing up, you start to realize that the works that you're reading are not reflecting your own reality. And so, and this was way before, topics of representation, that there was no such thing as a representation movement back when I was growing up. So this is like naturally. And so, yeah, I would read, and there's a saying that says the best writers are the best readers. So I would read, and then I'd also, plan out novels. And this is at the young age of like 7 or 8. And I was always writing. And it wasn't until I hit high school when I realized that I wanted to niche it down and that poetry was the thing that I wanted to pursue. And yeah, that's kind of where it started. I was 16, 17, posting my work on Tumblr. I don't know if a lot of people know what that app is, but I think it still exists, but not back in those days. Tumblr was like amazing. And yeah, it just slowly started from posting on social media. And here we are now today. So thankful for all my readers and all the people that, kind of interact with my writing online. It's because of them that I'm here today.
Mm. I want to go a little bit more back. So, when you were nurturing this, your parents were nurturing this, did you do any kind of like, I'm pretty sure there's probably little books that you've written that never got published, stories, poems. Can you
Yeah.
share any kind of story that you have?
Oh my gosh, I was like 10 or 11 and I fully was convinced that I was going to write like a fantasy novel because like I was a Harry Potter freak growing up, and I mean still am, but and I don't specifically remember what the details were, but I remember there was like these four main characters, and there was some sort of element of like magic, and yeah, like, but the thing is when you're younger, it's like your mind is always like, in so many different places. So I would abandon that and then, another story. But one of those that I remember is this kind of magical school book that I thought I was going to write at the age of 11.
That's so cute. Now, fast forward. Now you're in your teen years. You graduated from school? Where was your next steps? And how did this book came to be? How did you birth that?
Yeah, so yeah, I guess that leads us to Folkari. So what a lot of people don't know is I would say maybe 25% of the poems that are in Folkari are from when I was the age of like 16 to 17. One of my favorite, actually, my all-time favorite piece that I've ever written, it's called To My Father, Guru Gobind Singh. It's like just a small poem. And I actually wrote that when I was 16. So to be 29 now and to be like, hey, my favorite piece of writing I've ever written is this one, and it's from 13 years ago, is kind of crazy to me. But around that time, I was starting to find like a writing community on Tumblr, like I mentioned. At that point, Rupi Kaur hadn't published Milk and Honey, and I actually used to talk to her because there was a bunch of us like poets on Tumblr that were writing and sharing their poetry. And it wasn't until she published Milk and Honey that it kind of made me feel like, wow, like I could do this too. Like, so she kind of paved the way for Sikh artists in a way that she showed us that it was possible.
Hmm.
Because before that, any stories that I was writing, even as a kid, it was kind of ingrained in me that they needed to have like white names, that nobody would want to read a book that had like Punjabi names in it, for example. But when she was able to do what she did, it really made me feel personally like anything was possible. And that's where I kind of started my journey of courageously sharing online even more. That's around the time Instagram started to blow up as like a platform. And when I started posting on Instagram is really when like lots of public speaking events opened up to me. I started to create kind of like a writing community with other writers, whether they were Sikh or Punjabi or from other cultures. And that's when the gears started kind of turning that I could publish or self-publish a book. And, there was a lot of events along the way that kind of made it possible for Folkari to exist. So that's where it started.
Hmm. Yeah, I want to dig into Folkari. Your Folkari is literally unique, just like a Folkari, right? And I want to dig deep into that. Eh, how is your history with Sikhi, and how did you incorporate that into Folkari, and how was that a part of your journey?
Fulgari, I would say, because now people always ask me to compare Fulgari to Call Me Home. I would say that Fulgari was very intentional, and that kind of seems like it goes against the idea of art and like being organic and going with the flow. Sure, the poems in there were going with the flow, but the idea of Fulgari that I had in my head was very, very intentional. And what I mean by that is I had a specific goal in mind when I was publishing Folkari, and that goal was kind of to create a love letter for my people. So it's for Punjabi Sikhs, but if you are neither or if you're one and you pick it up and it resonates with you, that's amazing. But my goal with this book was to create that representation that I needed when I was growing up. So there's a whole um, chapter in this book that's just dedicated to Sikhi. And I mean, Sikhi, I took Amrit at the age of 7. Like I said, I'm almost 29 now, so 22 years on this path. And when I was writing Fulkari or when I was putting it together, I would say that I was, I was very, I would say spiritually rooted at that time. And the reason that I say that is because we think that Saki is like this line and like, you take Amrit and like that's it. But it's like waves, right? So you can be really spiritually rooted at one time and then at another point you can be like completely like you don't even know if this is a path for you. I've had both. And I would say that when I was writing and like putting Fogati together, I feel like I was feeling very, very close to Vaiguru at that point.
That's a beautiful feeling. That's a beautiful feeling. And I know your poems definitely hit home with a lot of people, both living abroad and in other places. all over the world. What is, I know you mentioned one poem, but is there any other poem that really stuck out to you that,
From Folkari, I mean, there's a couple. I actually wrote like a article on the 7-year anniversary of Folkari in May about how I kind of want to distance myself from it because I feel like most of it is not who I am anymore. But there are a couple poems in there that I took and included in Call Me Home, and the Four Diamonds poem is the one that I felt like I just couldn't let go of, so I put it in Call Me Home. But I mean, there are a couple I just can't think off the top of my head, but not very many, if I'm being honest, probably like less than 10.
mhm. And that's totally normal as a writer. You've outgrown yourself and developed something new. So
Yes.
going on to your new book, that's completely different. So walk me through where your intentions were with this book.
This was very organic. This was me coming back to writing. I took like a 3, 4 year break, got off of social media, went through a lot of changes in my life, got married, moved to a different country, and I started writing around the time that I moved. I went through a very, very difficult time adjusting to being away from my friends and family. It was very difficult for me, and I think that's something that we don't talk about a lot in our community is how lonely newlywed life can be. Not in the sense that you're being abandoned by your husband or your in laws, but just the internal grief of leaving everything as you've known it. And even if you aren't moving countries, even if you're moving like 10 minutes away from your home, it's still very lonely. So in that time, I had thought that I had outgrown writing or put it behind me. And when I was feeling all of this grief is when I actually realized that I needed the writing again. And I would say the writing is what kind of helped me get through that phase of my life. And yeah, and then from, becoming a wife, then I had my pregnancy journey, and all of that is kind of documented in Call Me Home. Went through some traumatic experiences. I had a miscarriage that really, really greatly, deeply affected me. And I feel like the writing was there for me the whole time. So when you're reading Call Me Home, you're actually witnessing Harmon like entering so many new phases of her life all at once. It's kind of overwhelming. But Call Me Home was simply just much more organic than Folkari was.
Hmm. Hmm. Let's talk about motherhood.
Hmm.
Motherhood is always uh puts us women to the test. I want to say,
Yes.
you know, motherhood is a beautiful journey. Um, Not everybody is always blessed with it, but there's other ways
Mhm.
of motherhood. So
Mhm.
share your journey with motherhood. I know you just mentioned a miscarriage, and
Yeah.
this is all part of the journey as well,
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
there.
Man, I mean, I didn't realize how exhausting it is. So, I mean, one thing I would say about motherhood, and you can view this as a cliche, and that's okay. I guess it's a cliche because it's true. You don't appreciate your mother as much until you become a mother. And I feel like, and you'll notice there's so many poems about my mom in Call Me Home, and even in my next book, I think it's going to be even more. But you just really put yourself in your mom's shoes, and for me, I keep on thinking about all the ways that I had more advantage in my motherhood journey than my mother. Like, a new immigrant in a new country, there was no support system versus what I have. And I'm just so thankful. It's made me so, so grateful becoming a mother to my own mother. And I think I'm more anxious now. And that's simply just because you know how crazy this world is and how messed up this world is, and I can't believe that I have to send my son out into this world. So, and those both sound like pretty negative things, but they're beautiful. I feel like they open up another, like, I could even say portal, and I've entered this portal and now I see the world differently. Does that make sense? I mean, you as
Oh,
a
yeah.
mother, can
Yeah,
you add
totally.
on to that?
I totally agree. I mean, I talk to my single friends and sometimes the conversations they have, granted, it's legit, checks out 100%, but I'm looking at a lens of a mother now, and that lens is just totally different, and they just don't they're not aware of it because they're not mothers, and that's totally fine, and I think that's where it's okay, and motherhood looks different on everybody, and Apni Punjabi culture doesn't give us the space to do that. Grieve, go through the motions. Instead, it's like they're probing and ask like too much stereotyping and not
Yeah.
giving just safe space, which I love how you talk about this as well about community.
Mhm,
ਆਪਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਿੰਨੀ community ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ like midwives, ਦਾਈਆਂ, like during this
mhm,
journey is so important,
mhm.
but we've all just gone super away from it and just lost our community. Um,
Yeah, I
you talk
agree.
about moving away from your parents, that was your home. Yeah.
Yeah, and like a lot of things, like when a mom has a baby, mਹੀਨਾ ਘਰ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਨਿਕਲਣਾ, right? And it through a Western lens, that seems kind of oppressive. Like, a mom can't leave the house. But really, ਉਹ ਪਿੰਡਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਦਾਈਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਸੀ, right? Your mama and the auntie, they all used to take care of that woman that just gave birth. And especially if you think about like how fragile you are, that especially that first month, like you just gave birth, you've been pregnant for 9 months. Now you have a newborn that wakes up every 2 to 3 hours. What's most important is sleep. And how can you get sleep when there's a support system around you? So um, there are pros and cons from what Punjabi culture kind of does in this pregnancy and giving birth journey. And I realize that now more than ever is that like, they said ਪਿੰਡਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ like ਸਾਰਾ ਪਿੰਡ ਨਿਆਣੇ ਨੂੰ ਪਾਲਦਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੀ, right? Like everybody like, and we don't have that here. We're so isolated. And I don't even know how we have children and raise them without burning out.
Yeah, definitely. Himmat Singh was a water birth and Naseeb just happened to come at home.
Oh my goodness.
And both my pregnancies were done by midwives and doulas.
Hmm.
And it was definitely like mama's like, "Tu pagal na?" Like loki mari jaunde a hospital,
Right, right.
burden
Yeah.
and then I
Hmm.
had to give my mom a like, reality check. I was like, "ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੀ ਖੇਤ ਚ ਕਿਤੇ ਹੋਏ ਹੋਏਂਗੇ." I'm like, "You're here getting mad at me, like going on Vaiguru Nala, like if anything happens, like I feel like as a female, exactly to your point, if we're not in tune with our body, we're not able to tell if there's something out of line. Then we can go to someone and ask for help. But we're just so caught up in this medicine Western world. Our OBGYN is telling us this thing,
Yeah.
and media is telling one thing, and you want this. And I
Hmm.
mean, even simple things about like breastfeeding and food and all this kind of stuff there's just a lot of not enough support. That's what it
Yeah.
is. Um,
And you mentioned like media and stuff. Like I actually just like a week ago kind of made a promise to myself that for like my next pregnancy, I wouldn't watch videos.
mm.
Especially because it's like, you already did it. Like you don't need to overthink it anymore. But I feel like my first pregnancy was just like, like scrolling, save, save, save. Um, and so many different people have so many different experiences, and what may be wrong for you might be right for somebody else. So that's actually a promise I made to myself actually just last week that, you know what, no relying on social media. It's just all going to be instincts and experience from now on.
Yeah, definitely. We lose in touch with that. I mean, I it's funny because my I was laughing to a friend. She's a first time mom, and I'm not gonna. She was like, get the hand sanitizers out and this and that. I'm like, okay, we got it out. And here, my kid was licking the seats at the movie theater. I'm like, Aggie, at that a hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
Like,
Legit.
I mean, we need, especially after Corona, after not being around people and touching, we do need to be around community. We need
Yeah.
good germs, bad germs. We need them all to kids to thrive and be
Yeah.
healthy.
Yeah.
But we are just been separated, and yeah, that's what I advocate. Being a Punjabi doula, I'm like, we need our community, we need our group.
Yeah.
We all need our community, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, because it might not always be family. Sometimes it's friends, neighbors, but whoever that is for you, yeah, you definitely need them.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about you. You had transitions from your book, and you said you had um, w- got married and got pregnant. Can we talk a little bit about your marriage? So, how did that play into your book? That obviously put a little bit of a pause, but how was that journey into marriage?
Well, I would actually credit my husband for kind of giving me the push to get back into writing when I had decided that maybe, that wasn't what I wanted to do anymore. So he's always been so supportive of me, still is to this day. Half the reason that I get any writing done now with almost 1.5-year-old is because my husband actively is giving me, time to write. He takes care of the kid, tells me to go drive off into a cafe somewhere, wherever it works for me. So he prioritizes my writing. He doesn't just view it as this like hobby, which I'm so grateful for because not everyone has a partner like that. But yeah, I mean, even because of the marriage, girls and their wedding planning. So, and we got married right after. I mean, there was still COVID restrictions during our wedding, and I'm in Canada, he's in the States, so the borders were closed. So it was really, really stressful not knowing, if the borders would open up by then. And then over top of that, Canada was super strict with their COVID guidelines. So we weren't even sure if all the people that we invited would actually be able to attend. So yeah, wedding planning was crazy. And then, yeah, the next phase of then moving over, that, like I said, was pretty difficult for me. And people have this idea that, like, oh, if you have a really good partner, like, it's not as bad. Kind of feel like it's sometimes worse because, like, you feel the guilt over top of that, right? Like, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm missing my family. I'm having like panic attacks. And over top of that, like, my husband is so amazing. And like, why am I doing this to him? So it adds this layer. Um, so yeah, I mean, until I would say I had my baby and was kind of like, now my priorities, like, that's my family. I don't think I did a really good job of coping with being away from my family. And it's like people would say to me like, "Oh, it's just a 2-hour flight," but it's like the little things, right? Like it's like you're just there with your parents, or like something's happening and you can just be there with your friends more, like, instead of like having to get on a flight and then like plan stuff, right? There's no room for spontaneity, and it's like your childhood, right? Like everything and everyone as you know it is like somewhere else. So yeah, that's like I said, that's what kind of encouraged me to start writing then, is because writing felt like a familiar friend,
Mhm.
and I didn't have any other familiar friends around, so I kind of relied on the writing.
Hmm. It's definitely not talked about enough how we females feel this way, and we do miss home. That's our first home, you know, and to leave it, having a daughter, I
Yeah.
think like I
Yeah.
think about it all the time,
Yeah.
and I know it's easy for people to say things like, "Oh, do kanti di flight, you can go whenever, phone kala, this and that," but um, it's not talked about enough how a female, when she has to leave, what the feeling is, and being a, and then you have to make your own family again,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
when you've already
Yeah.
established this. Um,
Yeah. And I feel like it's so crazy, but and I'm writing a poem about this in my next book, but the fact that like I knew from like the age of 5 or 6 that this is gonna happen. And like, when you're like sitting in family settings, like kei wari, like mere mama ji ne keh dena like hum tera vyah kara dena, and I would cry.
hmm,
Like they knew, as messed up as it sounds, like the one way to make Harmon cry is tell her that we're gonna get her married. So from a very young age, I had been like building and building it up, and like no wonder I had such an extreme reaction to when it finally happened, was because like I had known that this was coming for the longest time. And I mean, you have a daughter. I hope to have a daughter one day, and I'm thinking about what I can do differently to make sure that that's not a burden that she bears from such a young age, you know? Like, now that I think about it, that was pretty messed up to have to anticipate that feeling for so long.
Mm, it is, and I think, I mean, on the contrary, like, I feel like in most Punjabi families, it's sort of, not only are they prepping us that we're leaving, but it's almost like, "Don't get too comfortable here," you know? But I don't think that was the case in your situation,
No.
but it I can definitely see in other families and why
Yes.
the feeling of leaving, 'cause it was like, that was never my home too, you know, I could
Mhm.
never be there, you know?
Mhm.
Typically, we're told like, "Aave ਘਰ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਕਰੀ," "Chana
Yeah.
aapde ghar ja ke lai," "Je tu agar na aa kari," right? And it's like, but when you're able to do everything at your parental house, and then when you go to a loving house, it is definitely, when you're conflicted, because you get love
Yeah.
everywhere.
You get love everywhere, yeah. And also, like, the feeling of, like, even though I never felt like, the house, like my parents' house was not my house, but like that immediate shift, like you get married,
Mhm.
your doli happens, and then you come back the next day, it automatically feels like it's not your home anymore. And it's not because somebody like said something, it's just like you return home immediately the next day as a guest.
Yeah.
And like I always like try to tell my parents like, hey, like don't fuss over me, like don't treat me like a guest. Like this is my home and like I know where everything is. I'll make my own cha, everything, but still there's an element of that. And I find that so crazy.
Mm, mm. I know that, definitely is beautiful, probably going back and staying with them.
Yeah.
How else
Definitely.
do you go back?
Well, I mean, since I had Sabig, like I try to go at least every 2 months just because I want him to know his Nanake. And I'm lucky to have a career where it allows me to, go back and forth. But I mean, now that he's growing up and he likes to run around planes and stuff, it's so hard because my husband doesn't have the same flexibility, so I can't
Mhm.
rely on him to travel with us there. So yeah, it's kind of funny. Like I dread it now. Like I am going back home in a couple of weeks. I'm dreading it because when he was a baby, he would just sit in my lap. But now he's learned to walk and he just doesn't want to sit anymore.
Mm.
So
Give him some
yeah,
melatonin, relax him, get some warm
yeah,
milk, he'll be fine.
seriously. But yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky that I do get to go back a lot more than other people in my position do. So definitely grateful for that.
That's amazing. Like, being a mom, now that you have preparing for another book, what do you do when you have a roadblock? Like, you're sitting there, just things are not flowing. What do you do? What helps you get the wheels turning?
So, the funniest thing about having like not enough time to write is that instead of roadblocks, I call them like floods. It's kind of like I'm trying to build a dam because there's all these words and all these ideas coming, and but it's not working. The dam isn't able to hold it. So it's an opposite problem, right? When you
Mm,
have so much time, you encounter writing blocks, but when you don't have enough time, there's just too much. So I try to like have a system where like I have ideas, I write them down and try to like flesh them out later when I have some time. But yeah, it's actually the exact opposite problem.
that's so funny. I was gonna say, how do you do that? Like, 'cause me, I feel like I have that, but then I'm like, I'm pulling out my phone and notes, and I'm like, half the time when I look back at it, I'm like, I don't know what I wrote and how this makes
Right.
sense.
It's never going to be the same. It's never going to be like as good as like that first original thought. And if just had the time to flesh it out at that point, it's never going to be as good. But it's the reality of it, motherhood and career at the same time.
That's so true. That's so true. Well, I always like to ask, because I'm an esthetician, is
Mhm.
what is your beauty routine?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so during COVID, I fell into the online shopping, having like a 10-step like skincare routine, and I really fell into that. And honestly, like number one, I've always had like really great skin, so I don't even need all that stuff. We don't even know what half of the ingredients even do for you, right? So I mean, yeah, so I fell into that trap. But now I'm a mother, so I'm very conscious with my money and my spending. I literally just have a four-step routine. I just use Road Beauty.
Mhm.
Hailey Bieber has like this four-step routine, and it's like very clean girl skin. Feel like it works for me. Again, not 100% sure what the ingredients do, but it just works for me. So that is my routine.
I love that. And do you have, like, a morning routine that you can share with us?
That's literally it. Morning and night. One thing that I actually didn't understand before, but I do now, is I do exfoliate. And
Mm,
I found this Dermalogica, you know, that powder. I don't know if you've seen it.
yes,
Uh,
microfoliant.
yeah, Dermalogica. So it's like gentle, and I actually exfoliate like twice a day. And I feel like that has shown me results in my skincare more than anything like changing any other product has. Exfoliation is important.
Yes, 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 I love hearing that. Well, was there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners and where they can get the book?
Oh, yeah, okay. So, I mean, I mentioned Folkari. Folkari is only on Amazon. It was self-published. Call Me Home. It was traditionally published, so if you're in the States, you should be able to find it in your local Barnes and Noble. It's also on Amazon, and in Canada as well. It's in stores as well, in Chapters, Indigo, and then online as well. And something that I'd like to share, I guess I'm just want people to know that I'm working on that third book, and it's Um, almost there, crazily enough. I've been writing a lot lately, and I've been posting some of the poems online and been getting a lot of positive feedback from those. So I think this third book is going to be the best one yet.
And how can we as listeners support you?
Well, you guys can keep up with me on social media. I'm on Instagram. Instagram is kind of like my main. I was on TikTok before. I've kind of fallen out of love with TikTok now, and Instagram is kind of like my home base. So follow me there. It's Harman Kaur, but it's harmankate.aur. And I've recently started writing articles on Substack, so I post them on my stories as well. But one way you can support me is by actually reading those, because I'm trying to get into kind of long form. Please read my book. That doesn't mean that you necessarily have to buy it. You can request your local library to get some copies. You can, I don't know if they're on at used bookstores yet, or just borrow from somebody. But please, please, read my work. Lastly, if you have bought a copy, please leave a rating on whichever site that you bought it from. That's really, really important.
Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to interview with me.
Thank you so much. I am so, so thankful for this opportunity. So thank you for giving this space to me.
Cheers.